All right, guys. Tonight's going to be we're going to kind of keep it short because this stuff is intense and it's a lot to process, kind of, sort of. But we're doing Daniel chapter 7, if y'all don't remember. And we'll just give it another minute or two for anybody that's still joining or is planning on showing up. Hope everybody out there in Ethernet land is doing well.
Very well.
Blake's showing off his guns.
Doing some work today.
Jeffrey's driving and using his phone.
Illegally.
Huh?
Chris, I have a question. When Daniel 7 starts, what is the name of that? What is the historical chapter 7?
All right, you're going to have to try that again because your audio cut out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
The question being, is there a historical term for the shift between Daniel 6 and Daniel 7? Is it like the prophecies of Daniel start, whereas Daniel 1 through 6 is basically just giving you examples of how awesome Daniel is? Is there a certain term for the shift?
The transition that takes place, Daniel 1 through 6, are completely historical. Okay? The other 6, Daniel...
Am I still cutting out?
No, yeah, you are. I got you, though. Daniel 7 through 12, it ends in 12, right? Daniel 7 through 12 are prophecy. So they're all about the future. And Daniel chapter 7 includes up till today. Like, it's very interesting. So we'll go ahead, and I guess we got everybody on Zoom we're going to get, so we'll go ahead and get started. Those of you on YouTube, apologize for the delay. I'm just trying to be as nice as possible. So Daniel 1 through 6 are completely historical, right? They took place. We have enough evidence in the world, in other written books and etc. to know that everything that happened in Daniel 1 through 6 actually happened. Daniel 7 is where we get kind of this intimate look into Daniel's relationship with God. So we see that Daniel has these dreams and visions, and there's angels there that are helping to kind of decode what Daniel is seeing. And basically, Daniel 7 walks through things that are going to happen to Daniel all the way through to today. And remember, Daniel 7 takes place after Daniel 4 but before Daniel 5. So this all becomes, very odd from a jumping back and forth point of view. But we start off, and it breaks down into kind of like 3 sections. So the first section is 1 through 8, okay, which we're going to get into right now, and then it's 9 through 14, and then basically 15 through the end. So section 1 through 8 is this, it's kind of foreshadowing of the coming of Christ. So we start out, it says, in the first year of Belshazzar, remember Belshazzar is the one that took over for Nebuchadnezzar after the king appointed after Nebuchadnezzar ran away. So Belshazzar was considered Nebuchadnezzar's son, but wasn't really Nebuchadnezzar's son. So in the first year of that young king's reign, Daniel saw a dream and vision in his mind as he lay on his bed. Then he wrote the dream down and related the following summary of it. All right, so we have this important thing taking place that we have to remember, okay? I have taught this in church, and I get a lot of funny responses and people acting kind of weird about it. Your dreams that you have are important. The ones that you remember, I always say you should write them down if they are vivid, right? The dreams that you have that evaporate 5 seconds after you wake up, That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the dreams that you have that you can remember them like tomorrow or the next day, and like it really happened. Oftentimes, that is a way that God communicates with us, and the way the reason why He uses our dreams to communicate with us is because we have no interference, right? There's nothing distracting you. You're completely at His will because you're asleep, right? And it's kind of like the only clean way that He can completely get to us. So Daniel has this dream while he's sleeping, and when he wakes up in the morning, he writes it down. Now, the reason why he writes it down is because it is so important. It has such a profound effect on Daniel that when he wakes up, he's like, this is important. I've got to write this down. And if he hadn't have written it down, we wouldn't have it here. Because ancient tradition was these books were memorized and they were passed forward generation to generation verbally, right? And so if somebody hadn't had it to read, then we wouldn't know about it. So he has these dreams. They are while he's sleeping. Verse 2, it says, Daniel said, I was looking in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. So when we read about the four winds of heaven, everybody kind of thinks of like wind blowing from all four directions or something. The four winds from heaven, what that actually means is there's four different forces blowing in all different directions, okay? If you've ever been on the water when a storm comes up, you know how the waves build up. And if you've ever been on the water during a really bad storm, the waves can be absolutely atrocious, right? Well, imagine four forces kind of not blowing on the earth, but metaphorically blowing on the earth, just creating complete chaos. It's kind of like the zone we live in now, right? Everything is crazy. The economy's tanked. We got this virus going around that we don't know. Nobody can tell us if it'll kill us or not. Nobody can tell us if we have a cure or not. We have, China lying about it. We got groups of people in certain regions. The death rate is like 40%, and in certain places 2%. And UK is leaving the European Union, and there's countries literally they're going to start folding because of economic collapse. Everything's kind of coming at us at one time. That's what they're talking about when they say the four winds, all right? So verse 3, it says, the four great beasts were coming up from the sea, okay? So out of this turmoil, four kingdoms rise. Don't get distracted by the beast thing as actual beast, like, rah, right? They're not beasts. You can't think of it like that. These are representations. They use animals here to kind of define how the kingdoms act, okay? So the four great beasts were coming up out of this turmoil, and they were all different from one another, meaning you could tell the difference between one kingdom from the next without any difficulty whatsoever. The first kingdom was like a lion and had the wings of an eagle, okay? I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. A human mind also was given to it. All right, so we know from reading Daniel that this first beast that came in like a lion and had eagle's wings is Nebuchadnezzar. And the reason why we know this is because Nebuchadnezzar took over a huge region really fast, like he could fly, right, like an eagle. And remember, he was put out to pasture like a cow, like turned into a crazy person, and then became sort of one with God and started to have a heart and care about people in his own way, right? Even though he threatened to kill anybody that wouldn't back down to God, he didn't quite get it right, but he became human. He stopped being authoritarian and put power back into God. So this first one, the first beast, is Nebuchadnezzar, already happened, okay? And I think this is part of what shocks Daniel, because he's having this dream and he's going to know, kind of, after being with Nebuchadnezzar and going through all that, to know that he's talking about that, so this dream becomes really real to him. Verse 5 goes on and says, behold, another beast, a second one resembling a bear, and it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth, and thus they said to it, arise, devour much meat. All right, so this second beast, remember Darius is the one that defeated Nebuchadnezzar, right? Nebuchadnezzar was, or not Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's next in line.
Predecessor.
Belshazzar was killed by Darius. Okay? Darius was the Medo-Persian kingdom. So the very next beast that we read about is exactly the same king, again, that Daniel served under. Right? The Medo-Persian army or kingdom came up fast and was powerful, but couldn't really gain too much ground. Okay? It wasn't like Nebuchadnezzar where this huge swath of land was taken over. The Darius' kingdom was much smaller. So, and behold, another beast, the second one resembling a bear, right? The ribs in its mouth. That just means he's devouring small countries. They were just ribs. Verse 6, after this I kept looking, and behold, another one like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. All right, so the next beast is the leopard. The leopard is the Grecian kingdom, or the kingdom of Greece, right? This is where we get all the philosophy from. If you remember, you have the stupid Greek god thing with like Zeus and
Mythology.
Thor, right? Greek mythology, all that. The 4 kingdoms that they talk about, Alexander the Great was the last emperor of the Greek kingdom that the Greek kingdom was held together, okay? Alexander the Great was killed when he was 33. When he died, 4 of the generals that served under him split the territory into 4 parts, okay? Daniel, this is Daniel's vision. This is nowhere near the time when Daniel was alive. Have to remember that because it's very important, okay? So we know from reading just his first 3 kingdom explanations that this vision that Daniel is having is spot on, okay? Because we know history now. We can look back and say, oh yeah, that happened, right? So verse 7, it says, after this I kept looking into the night visions. All right, so when I know a lot of people have a hard time reading the Bible, right? But when you read something like this, you're like, what? I kept looking into the night visions. Daniel was so entranced in this vision that he was actually looking for more. Okay? So God gave him this little bit, and while he was watching this take place, he's like, okay, there's got to be more, there's got to be more. So he's actually, in his vision, he's actually searching for more from God. And behold, so after searching, God grants him the 4th beast. Now, before we get into the 4th beast, I want to remind everybody on YouTube that's watching and everybody that's on Zoom tonight, you are not allowed to know when Christ will return. Anybody that tries to tell you that we're in the end times and Jesus is coming October 10th, or he's coming, in 2022, or this is a sign that Jesus is near, or whatever, they're lying. They don't know. They're making it up. You are not allowed to know. Daniel begged God for additional detail. God granted it to him in this way, where we still cannot know exactly when Christ is coming, but we get some clues of the general time span in hundreds of years that these events are taking place. Okay? So after this I kept looking in the visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrifying and extremely strong, and it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet, and it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Okay. 10 horns, more than likely, we don't know for sure, it's 10 countries, right? So 10 well-known big countries, all right? The iron represents something strong, okay? So we know it's extremely fast, it's extremely strong, and had large iron teeth. So it was devouring everything it came in contact with. Verse 8, while I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great boasts. All right. I know this stuff is all symbolic, and it's kind of hard to follow, all right? But the 10 countries that came out of the Roman Empire, okay, are Italy, Germany, England, France, Spain, Russia, Netherlands, Turkey, Switzerland, and Poland. Out of those 10 countries, those are the 10 largest gross domestic product countries currently, okay, and have been for a long time. Out of those, the little horn rose. We're not sure what the little horn is. I would take a guess and say it's the European Union, okay? So out of the giant giant Roman kingdom, 10 smaller kingdoms rose out of it, and out of those 10 kingdoms, one little kingdom rose, okay? The European Union has very little power compared to a true country that stands by itself in kingdom form, right? And it started out little, and we have the description of eyes of a man and a mouth uttering great boasts, meaning we know better than everybody, we can help take care of everybody, right? It's also known as socialism. So this socialist kind of government rises up out of these 10 countries. So I'm going with it's the EU. There's some people that agree with me. There's some people that completely disagree and think that's the dumbest thing ever. It just depends on what you read. We don't know for sure what it is. All right. Then we get into verse 9, and verse 9 is changed because we flash forward from the past, right? Everything that we just talked about has already happened. Literally. We all know the Roman army happened. The Roman kingdom happened. We all know the Greek kingdom happened, right? All these things have already happened. So verse 9 jumps where we flash forward to end times. Okay? And we get that hint because we're reading carefully. It says, I kept looking until thrones were set up and the Ancient of Days took his seat. So we're talking about when God comes back to judge the earth, right? So the end times. Listen to the description. Of the Ancient of Days just means God eternal. God's been around forever. He's been around since day one. He's still around now, right? His vesture was like white snow. So his hair and his clothes, right? And the hair of his head was like pure wool. So his hair on his head was kind of like my dad's. I wish I could get a picture of my dad and show you. Poofy, white hair, and his clothes were white, like pure white, right? His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were a burning fire. So the fire is a judgment. Throne, again, a judgment, right? Purification. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were attending him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. So the thousands upon thousands attending him is 1 million people. That's not people, it's angels. There are, in this vision, there were 1 million angels attending to God. Then we get the myriads and myriads, which is the millions upon millions, were standing before him. That's you and me, right? We're hanging out, worshiping God because we've gone on to the kingdom of heaven. The court sat and the books were opened. Everybody knows what the books are, right? The Lamb's book of life, okay? He opens the books to see who's in it. Whoever's in it gets to stay. Whoever's not in it doesn't get to go to heaven, okay? Then I kept looking because of the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body was destroyed and given to the burning fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time. So we have this crazy thing happen where the Antichrist, right, the beast that rises out, is slain. When he is slain, the other three kingdoms, their power is taken away, but they're allowed to remain for an appointed period of time. If you remember, those of you who were at my Revelation Bible study, feels like 100 years ago now, but it was probably like early this year. I don't remember. But we learned that there was a point in time where God let everything be so that those of us who were still here, who were saints, could at the last minute reach the last set of lost people possible, right? So God allows the people that are not partaking in this kingdom of the Antichrist, the people that are outside of the Antichrist kingdom, he lets them remain so that we can reach them and save them, so that they can know Christ. All right? So we go on to verse 13. It says, I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. So we have this beautiful representation of Christ. Obviously, Daniel doesn't know Jesus as in Jesus of Nazareth, but Daniel has a relationship with God, so he understands the concept of Christ, right? We know Daniel's in heaven. He was a follower of Christ. He didn't have a name for it at the time. And so he actually shows us this beautiful thing taking place where the Trinity, which I know people struggle with so badly, but the Trinity is three separate entities that are all one. Right? And we get this represented here because the Son of Man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. Right? We all know when Jesus comes, what's going to happen. Every knee will bow. Right? Everybody will admit that Jesus is Jesus. Even the chairs in our church will sing out. Okay? His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. So we know for sure that God let Daniel see Christ. Exactly what was going to happen when Christ came. Okay. So this is the thing, right? You got to imagine Daniel's terrified. I don't know about you, but if I was ever visited by angels in a dream, or ever thought I was having a conversation with God and I could hear him out loud and he was showing me stuff, I'd be wigged out. I'd be totally like off the wall crazy, and I'm super faithful, right? I would be completely like, what is happening? So Daniel was like super just like, what is going on? And the key to remember to this is that God had his angels there, okay? So if God ever puts us in a situation where he's trying to share something with us or wants to tell us something and we don't understand it, he's going to give us an explanation. He's going to share with us. We don't have to worry about trying to figure it out. I always have a hard time with people that are like, I know God is telling me something, but I just don't know what it is. I always look at them straight in the face and tell them, you're lying to yourself. You either don't want to know the explanation, or you're denying the explanation, because God is not a God of confusion, right? So he makes sure that with Daniel, he has an angel there to explain to him everything. So that's where we get in verse 15, we step into this explanation thing where the vision is interpreted. So it goes on, it says, as for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed within me, and the visions in my mind kept alarming me. I love this. I approached one of those who were standing by me and began asking him the exact meaning of all of this. Right? So you gotta, again, put yourself in Daniel's shoes. He's having an out-of-body experience. This has got to be the coolest thing ever. Not only is he having an out-of-body experience of sorts, but he's able to walk around, and there's not just one angel there attending to him. There's more than one, because it says, I approached one of those who were standing by. It's just so beautiful. And began asking the exact meaning of all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. So that now we get the explanation from the angel. If you didn't believe Chris, the stupid pastor from Reisdville, here we go in biblical format, right? These are the great beasts in verse 17, which are 4 in number, are 4 kings who will rise from the earth. But the saints of the highest one will receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, for all ages to come. Goes on, he says, then I desired to know the exact meaning of the 4th beast. So Daniel stops and he says, okay, that's a great explanation, but now I have to know in detail. I beg God to continue the visions, to show me what all this means. I have to know in detail about this 4th beast. And he says in verse 19, I desired to know the exact meaning of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its claws of bronze, and which devoured, crushed, and trampled down the remainder with its feet. Okay, So we get a few key things here, all right? The iron we know is strength. The thing we don't understand about brass, and I still don't understand this, but I just have read it in so many places that I kind of accept it. Brass actually stands for judgment against God. And I'm not sure why. But what this is saying is the fourth beast that rises, the Roman Empire, will cast its human judgment on God. What did the Roman Empire do to Christ? Crucified him, right? Pontius Pilate was part of the Roman Empire, and he's the one that made the decision to crucify Christ. And you say, well, you blame it on the Jews because the Jews let Barabbas go and they wanted Christ crucified. Pontius Pilate could have still stepped up and said no, right? So here we have Daniel literally telling the future exactly as it takes place. So we know, again, I always like to iterate, the Bible is pure truth. We know, again, that everything that we're reading here is true and actually happened and came from God. Last bit of verse 19 is in which devoured, crushed, and trampled down the remainder with his feet, right? The Roman Empire took over everything. I mean, there was nothing left. There was no other empire for the longest time. Verse 20, the meaning of the 10 horns that were on its head and the other horn which came up and before which 3 of them fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth uttering great boasts, and which was larger in appearance than its associates. I kept looking, and that horn was waging war with the saints and overpowering them. So as the Roman Empire falls, which we're still part of, kind of, okay? And I'll get into that in a minute. But as the Roman Empire falls, the Antichrist rises up, and Christians start getting persecuted. Right? On a level that probably hasn't happened before, but in a different way than what you're thinking. We're not going to be sent to gulags. We're not going to be beaten in the streets. We're going to be socially erased. We're going to be banned from worship. Right? Those are the sort of things that are going to happen. And that persecution is going to be more dire to us than if we were to walk down the street and get rocks thrown at us. And I can prove that because look at everybody who's just dying, literally dying right now to be back in church. They cannot stand being on quarantine. Okay? Now imagine if you were forced for a longer period than this to not be allowed to go to church. It would kill you. Literally. It would be the death of you. It would drive you insane. That's persecution. That's what we're talking about. And that persecution can be more mentally severe than actual physical abuse. Right? So I kept looking, that horn was waging war with the saints and overpowering them until, in verse 22, the Ancient of Days came and judgment was passed in favor of the saints of the highest one, and the time arrived when the saints took possession of the kingdom. So here we have to stop just for a second. Jesus is referred to as the highest one. He's our God, right? God the Father and Jesus are one and the same part of the Trinity. But we go through Jesus because he sanctifies us and gives us the ability to be in the presence of God the Father. Okay. I don't want to over-explain that, but also don't want to just leave that hanging out there, right? So, judgment was passed in favor of the saints of the highest one, and the time arrived when the saints took possession of the kingdom. Daniel was faithful. Super faithful, to the point that God is visiting in his dreams. Daniel is the one that deciphered the dream of Nebuchadnezzar without knowing it. Daniel is the one that deciphered the writing on the wall. Daniel is the one that was the supervisor or leader of his friends that went into the furnace, right? Daniel is the one that was in the lion's den and didn't get eaten. Who keeps winning here? The saints. Right? So no matter, this is key for today, no matter what you've got going on in life, stay true to God, right? If you're getting frustrated from being on quarantine, I understand it. Don't take it out on people. Stay true to God, right? Stay in service to God. Understand that,
compromise.
Right. Understand that you're serving God by being sane and being true to what he called you to do no matter the circumstances, that is the only way you're going to survive. It's the only way you're going to persevere. You can look at this, for people like me, a germaphobe, which people joke about all the time, but like it's like a real thing. This is my equivalent of a lion's den. Every time I step through my front door out into the world, even if I just come to my office where nobody else comes and it's just me, I'm surrounded by, in my mind, I'm surrounded by lions, right? The coronavirus is out to get me. It's just how I feel. I go to the post office, it's torture. I get a box shipped to my office, it's torture. Whatever. So, and I'm not belittling the lion's den or raising what we're going through. I'm just saying you can use it as an experience in your own life for the things you're struggling with, right? Like, I think about people like Blake. Blake was at college. He was living his own life. Everything was fantastic. He's exercising, being an adult, and all of a sudden he's back under the thumb of his mom and dad. Okay? He's in a lion's den of sorts. And the only way he's going to survive it is by staying true to what Christ calls him to do. So again,
100%.
Yeah, we can use Daniel as a reference for anything we're going through, and we're not belittling what Daniel did or how great he was, and we're not raising up what we are doing. We're staying humble. We're just using the lesson. All right, so we're almost there. I told you this stuff was kind of heavy, and it is. Jesus comes, takes possession of the kingdom, and then kind of gives the saints the kingdom, right? It says the saints took possession of the kingdom, but that's because Jesus gives it to them. Verse 23, thus he said, the fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which will be different from all other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth and tread it down and crush it. As for the 10 horns out of this kingdom, 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones, and will subdue 3 kings. He will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One, and he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. All right, so here we get into the weird Bible gobbledygook speak that people get hung up on.
2.5 years or something like that.
3.5 years from the book of Revelation. A time is a year. Times is 2 years, right? A time, times, and half a time, half a year. So 1 plus 2 plus a half is 3.5. That's the 3.5 years in the book of Revelation where the Antichrist has free reign, okay? And that is somewhere in the neighborhood, let's say the 500-year neighborhood of where we are now. I don't know if the Antichrist is going to pop up tomorrow. I don't know if it'll be in 2244, right? But that's where we are right now. We're in that neighborhood. The Roman Empire is coming to an end, and whatever the Antichrist is going to be is rising up and taking its place. Verse 25, I won't go back to this. He will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One. Man, if you don't see this happening today. People getting, literally, some of the most biblical people, you see them just getting worn down, right? Getting kind of beaten into submission and giving up positions that the Bible would never give up, okay? There's some positions that no matter what society tells you, you can't change them, okay? Murder is always wrong. Abortion is murder. So therefore abortion is always wrong. It doesn't matter how you justify it, what you say about it, it's wrong. There's a life created, you're taking it away, it's wrong. If you disagree with that, that's your problem between you and the Bible. It's got nothing to do with anything else, right? There are only 2 genders, man and woman. You may feel like a woman, right? You may feel like a man. It doesn't matter. God gave you a certain set of plumbing. That is the definition of who you are in regards to God. That cannot be changed. So you see these things taking place that are kind of beating us down. And oftentimes, remember, they talked about the mouth of a man, right? So the idea that instead of coming from God, we're getting our knowledge from ourselves. Science, unfortunately, is often used as a weapon. And although the Bible and science can be tied together perfectly, they're often used as a point of division unnecessarily. So that's where, as I said, that's where we are today, right? I mean, we're gene editing babies, for crying out loud. There's something wrong. There's something wrong with what we think we can get away with. Verse 26, but the court will sit for judgment, and his dominion will be taken away, annihilated, and destroyed forever. Everything that the devil likes, everything that the devil is interested in, will no longer exist. So if you like things the devil likes, you're in trouble, right? So as people, we need to focus on the things of God. Now, also, you cannot use this as a weapon of judgment against other people, because you have to remember all things are created for the good of God. God created everything. So therefore, if you have a disagreement with somebody about something and they're not abusing it or using it to lead people away from Christ, then that doesn't necessarily mean it's of the devil. And this becomes very important in different versions of the Bible we read, right? Different philosophies of things in the Bible that weren't important to Jesus, like pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib. Who cares? At some point, Jesus is coming back and you're taking a ride to heaven. Whether it happens before all the ugly or after the ugly, it doesn't matter. You're going to be in heaven. What version of the Bible is the best one? Well, the King James Bible was written in 1600 something, and it was taken from a Bible that already existed. So what was wrong with the one that already existed? You can't say the King James Bible is the only Bible. It's the dumbest thing ever. So, and you can take it into different realms. A pastor should never be overweight. Hello, look at me, right? If I lived God's rule perfectly, I would never overeat or overconsume. We do these things. Everything that was created for good. Fried chicken is delicious, right? Fried chicken is delicious. We're just not supposed to eat 4 pieces of it, right? So, you got to be careful that you don't get stuck in this trap where you fall into exactly what the devil wants, which is what is set up during these times, right? This idea of judgment, of separating each other and chasing each other away. Remember, everything the devil loves, everything the devil works for will be taken away and destroyed forever. Verse 27. Then the sovereignty, the dominion, and the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the highest one. All right, so I kind of like this. And I'm reading a little into it, I'm going to admit. We have this idea of heaven as like this place, right? And like, I don't know, I think we think of it like a village. Unlike, maybe like a hillside, and there's Jesus' house is on the top, and there'll be houses all around, or we'll all live in Jesus' house, or whatever, right? If you read this, it actually makes it sound like Jesus is the world that is recreated. We know the world is recreated. But what I mean is kind of how we think of it now, where I live in America and there's people that live in Spain, and we're both going to live in America and Spain, but we'll also be in heaven. So I think that's kind of cool, right? Like, we'll have our different things, but God will still be the focus, and we'll all live for him. So the reason why I get that is listen to this one more time in verse 27. Then the sovereignty, the dominion, and the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the highest one. So we get all the best things from everywhere, right? His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all the dominions will serve and obey him. Now, I love this, because I often hear from people, and I've said it myself because I think it's funny, is if you don't like church, you're not going to like heaven, right? If you don't like praying to God, you're definitely not going to like heaven. If you don't like listening to some kind of Christian music at some point in your life, you're not going to like heaven, because everybody up there is singing, supposedly. The thing that I love about this is what happens in heaven. We all think that we automatically just worship God because he's God, right? And that like free will is somehow taken away from us, and we can't do stuff. I'm a firm believer, and reading the book of Revelation, that we'll have jobs in heaven. And it'll be whatever God actually designed you to do, not what you do today. And we'll have free will to come and go to work and make decisions and stuff. But the key thing that happens in heaven is that last part of verse 27. We will serve Jesus and we will obey Jesus. So you think about how horrible things can be on earth, right? And how magical and wonderful things are sometimes when we obey Jesus. Sometimes when we obey Jesus, the world is the most beautiful place. Imagine what it would be like if we all obeyed him now, right?
All the time.
All the time. It would be amazing. That's what heaven's like. So don't let somebody scare you if you go to church and you go just because you love God and you're dedicated, but you really don't enjoy church. Don't let that scare you from heaven, because all you're going to be doing is doing what you're doing now, which is obeying God. It's really cool. It's a cool way to look at heaven. Anyway, last verse of the night, and then we're done. I know it's been a lot. There's no way to break this up, though. We had to do it all in one go. At this point, the revelation ended. Right? So Daniel gets the final answer. He sees all of these horrific things taking place, and then, boom, it's over. But I love this because it's got to be comforting. Because Daniel, although he knows all of the horrible things that are happening, he also knows the end before it happens, and the end is glory. The end is Jesus. And if you could take a snapshot of your life right now and know what the ending was going to be like, it would terrify you up until the point that you were in Jesus' arms at the very end. Then you'd be like, oh, that's all right then, that works out, right? So God really does take care of him. Remember, he's surrounded by angels. Not only is he surrounded by multiple angels, but he's given a clean, nice, beautiful, loving ending. At this point, the revelation ended. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts were greatly alarming me, and my face grew pale, but I kept the matter to myself. When God revelates or reveals something to you, I think I just made up a word. I'm going to go with it. When God revelates to you, you don't necessarily have to share it. It may not be for everybody else. Keep that in mind, okay? Because oftentimes we forget that our relationship with God is ours and it's not anybody else's. My relationship with God is completely different than my wife's, but we both have one, right? A very good one. But we both have one in a completely different manner. So when God shares something with me, that does not mean that I'm to share it with everybody, because it's not everybody's business. It's my personal relationship with God. Now, lucky for us, Daniel wrote it down. He didn't share it with anybody, but he wrote it down, and somebody found the writing. So we were able to have it, to look at it and read. But remember, your relationship with Christ is personal to you. You serve him, nobody else. Don't ever forget that. So that's Daniel 7 in a nutshell. We blew through it as fast as we possibly could. I said I wanted it to be about 25 minutes. It's been about 45. I apologize. I tried my best. Next week, Daniel 8, we get another set of visions, and it gets even more interesting. And just keep reading it. You can read ahead. You're not going to spoil anything. And remember, Sunday morning, 10:45. Church is in, y'all. I don't know what people are saying about the church being empty. We'll be in church. Full-on church happening. 10:45. Tune in. I would like to close tonight with prayer. I'm a little worried about people's perceptions of what is happening with the virus and the success that is taking place right now with the numbers dropping, that people are going to start saying that we're overreacting, and people are going to start going out in public and causing a second wave of infections. And I would like to address that with God and help keep our sanity. And maybe we could pray for the media to not be so biased against the work that is being done for the good, aside from what you politically feel about any party. It doesn't matter. So if you will, just join me in prayer. God, come before you this evening, grateful for the ability to get together and to study your word. Thank you for the book. I love it. Read it all the time. Can't get enough of it. Forever grateful for my relationship with you. I ask for the protection of my sheep that are in my care, of my family and my friends. Lord, I just pray you just keep them safe. We're here serving you, and we just ask for your divine protection. And I also ask for a little bit of your wisdom to be spilled out on the world that seems so bent on setting up, attacking each other unfairly during this time. God, please grant us the wisdom to solve this problem temporarily so that we may go back forth into your kingdom once again and bringing people to you in person instead of on the internet. Love you, forever grateful for your sacrifice and for your never-ending love. It's in Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys. See you Sunday, 10:45. Don't be late, but remember, I'm the only one that has to wear pants because you can see my pants now in our new setup. So the rest of you can be in pajamas. Doesn't matter. Just come to church. We're going to have a great time. Love y'all. See you then. Remember to give it 10 seconds or so. Bye, YouTube.
Bye bye.
It was good to see you, Blake.